the American Clergy Leadership Conference. I must say at this moment that within the video, you heard Dr. Ki-Hoon Kim. I want to be fair to our leader of the World Christian Leadership Conference. Only this morning did I ask him to speak, and here's the reason why. He mentioned to me a few days ago that he did register to be with us today. And in my prayer this morning, Dr. Young finished, it hit me that such a leader coming should have an opportunity to greet us. And so it was only this morning, he said that he would try to really be here to do that. So Young Soon, if Dr. Kim comes in, you let me know, because we'll still have him greet everybody. But at this time, I want to turn to our session 1 as we continue on the vision for peace with chosen, reviving America through the blessing. This young, dynamic, this man of God has all that is needed to be groomed and developed into the leader, not for tomorrow, but right here and now. Joshua Holmes is the American Clergy Leadership Conference Program Director and the Young Christian Leadership Conference National Director. He was born in Los Angeles, but now he is residing in the New York and New Jersey area, and then he gets back to his wife, Takayo, who he was blessed to last year by Mother Moon. Fresh from being blessed, he has much to say to us today. He served with me as he was the assistant pastor at the Manhattan Family Church in New York City, while I was there with former President Damian Dunkley. We had a great time. I didn't think there could be any other greater role that Reverend Holmes could play, but I was wrong. I first met him in Los Angeles in 2019. He was finishing his degree studies at California State University, Long Beach. He was in business administration, focusing on marketing, but during that time, he was already in ministry. He was the leader of the Collegiate Association for Research of Principle. He was one who was giving campus ministry new meaning. I knew then that he would be the leader that he is now, but he is even greater than I could imagine. I'm really telling you, my heart is with this man that you're going to hear right now. Minister Joshua Holmes, come and make this happen.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse. Thank you, Dr. Young as well, and all the incredible ministers and brothers and sisters on today's program. I'm honored to be here and excited to be here with you all. I'm excited to be here because everything that's shared today, I feel like my life and my course has been blessed and just, I exist here today because of the blessing of marriage. I exist here today because of this, and I give all honor, praise, and glory to God, Jesus, and Father and Mother Moon for all that they've done to bring me to this point. So I welcome you to the Chosen Seminar, Reviving America Through the Blessing of Marriage. And I want to just acknowledge that we have 3 key reasons or purposes for this seminar. The first is that we want to acknowledge the difficult situation that we are now in as a people and as a nation, as a body of Christ even, the difficult circumstance. Secondly, we're here to lay down some of the God-given, common sense, pragmatic principles that God has given us in this life and in this universe. And the third is to offer a realistic vision for achieving peace, a vision for revival, and not just a vision, but actual steps that will make things better. Those steps begin with today. And then next week, when we have our blessing ceremony, we will begin on a 43-day journey. And those 43 days are not just 43 days of sitting through a seminar or listening to lectures, but rather a time for prayer, for deep reflection and specific action that we can take that enable us to restore godly true love in our lives. So that is Chosen, Reviving America through the Blessing of Marriage. And one of our goals is to reach 144,000 blessed, chosen clergy and ministers in America. Take them through the blessing experience, and in so doing, uplift and renew a culture and spirit of this nation and in the church. So we'll share more about the blessing later. You got a little bit earlier. We'll go into it more later. But for now, let's start with this first session, the family in crisis and the need for a marriage movement. Session number 1. So let's first look at Proverbs 29:18, where it says, without vision, the people perish. And in some translations, this is revelation, or it's what we know is that it's God-given vision. Without vision, the people perish. And today, when we look around us at the situation of our nation at large, the image of a people, a body united, centered on a common vision given by God is increasingly difficult to find. And instead, we see increased division between political parties, between the very rich and the very poor, between contradictory viewpoints and opinions held by people who seem unable to even listen to one another. And at first that was something that was just happening over there, but now it's come personal, and even in our own families, we don't want to convey what we really believe because you never know what kind of argument you're going to get into. And on top of that, we see tension increasing between races. And even though people are more connected than ever before, there are signs that people are becoming more and more isolated and alienated from each other with technology. So you take the example of this dramatic increase in the rate of depression in our world today. And in this study by the Blue Cross Blue Shield, which focused on the rate of change for major depression in a 3-year span from 2013 to 2016, 2013 being the orange, and 2016 being the blue, there was an increase in major depression in every age group, and most tragically in the children. The 12 to 17-year-olds, a 63% increase. This is our situation today. So we've mentioned some of these problems, these divisions that we are facing now because we lack clear vision in this country. And we pause for a moment to consider the question: why do nations and civilizations decline and even collapse? There are many factors, but a key point is that a nation and civilization may prosper and advance, have fruit in their prosperity, but the seeds of destruction are always still there. And this is because with prosperity and economic development, people more easily give in to selfish desires, which leads to moral collapse. And we question, why does this happen? Why in our development externally do we collapse internally? Well, the reason is because people are pursuing prosperity without principles. Prosperity without principles, without fundamental, underlying, God-given principles to guide us, we end up being strongly have a tendency to become selfish. Where do these principles that we need come from? Well, they come from God and His Word. We know this. We're talking to the ACLC, I'm preaching to the choir, but in fact, there's a deep, deep lesson here to be learned, and we look towards history for this. I take the example of Lord Sachs. He was awarded the Templeton Prize 2016, very honored prize to receive. And he comes to this conclusion, that empires fall because of rampant immorality. The decline and fall of both the Greek and the Roman empires was attributed to falling birth rates because nobody wanted the responsibility of bringing up children. Rampant immorality. And then Arnold Toynbee, a British historian, draws this conclusion that out of 21 notable civilizations, 19 perished, not by conquest from without, but by moral decay from within. Moral decay from within the nation, within the family which builds that nation, and within the individuals whose hearts, soul, and mind build together the family. So what we're looking at is moral decay in America today. That's what we're faced with. This is the work of the righteous people. So we consider this fact. Since 1973, we in America have killed over 60 million unborn babies. Do you think that this is a sign of a healthy civilization? No, it tells us something is seriously wrong. And there are other signs that we as a culture are headed in the wrong direction, a direction away from God. And one of those is the number of suicides in the United States. 29,000 people in 1999 died of suicide. In 2018, that number grew to 48,000. And suicide is now the second leading cause of death amongst youth 15 to 24 years of age. Or we consider the growing problem of drugs in our world. And according to the US Department of Health and Services, more than 76,000 people have died since 1999 from drug overdose. In 2019 alone, it was 70,000 people. And in the same year, 10 million people misused prescription opioids. This is what we're faced with in our society. This is what we're tackling right now. And the issue that has emerged, moral decay. And we have shared many of these serious problems that our nation is facing, but the real problem, the problem that has been undermining the most fundamental foundations of our communities and our nation is the decline and the breakup of the family. The family is the necessary foundation for a healthy community, a healthy nation, and the world. The family is the kingdom of God. It's the very foundation upon which God can rejoice and stream his love as a heavenly parent into the lives of the children, between the siblings and the couples and the parents to the children. His love is manifest in the family, his kingdom, which is made up of his image and he designed us not just to be individuals, but then to come together and produce godly offspring. It's biblical. God's plan was to reside in this kingdom. So when we go against that desire, we collapse. And as the family declines, so also the nation as well. Without vision, the people perish. And the root of vision is values, because we create our vision based on our values. So where do our values come from? Our most basic values can be found in the family, and we know this. As Christians, we know this. When we call them family-based values, or true family values, they include honoring God in your family. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment, and second is like it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So we honor our parents. That's one of the 10 commandments. We maintain sexual purity before marriage. We honor marriage itself. We remain faithful to our spouse. That's fidelity. We raise children with guiding principles, and we place limits because a certain level of discipline is necessary. But here's what we see happen. In the 1960s, we had what has been called the sexual revolution, which came a steep decline in the family. And now we have children with multiple parents, and they have parents who broke their oath, and have stepfathers and stepmothers they don't feel they would need to ever honor. And instead of purity, we have premarital sex is accepted and even expected. Marriage is not seen as a commitment to be honored, and divorce seems to have been normalized, and more children are raised without principles or clear limits, principles that can guide them. And because of that, this next generation is set on a course of suffering. Here's a quote from the American Psychological Association: that healthy marriages are good for couples' mental and physical health, but they are also good for the children. Growing up in a happy home protects children from mental, physical, and educational and social problems. However, about 40 to 50% of married couples in the United States divorce, and the divorce rate for subsequent marriages is even higher. So we consider the rate of divorce in the United States. We look at the 1950s, pre-sexual revolution, 20% of marriages end in divorce in America. Then we look in 1980, it spikes and goes higher to 50%. And then we see in 2020, it declines, which might be surprising for some, but don't take this as good news. For one, 41% is still 41%. It's a high number. And the other is that one of the main reasons this is happening is because couples are still engaging in relationship. They're still having children, but they are not marrying. And as a result, there's a shocking number of children who are born in homes without fathers or in single-parent homes. And we see this increase, and it's described in the New York Times that it's increased by 1,500% in the past half century. This style of living, not marrying, just relationship. And according to the CDC and prevention, the percentage of children born to single mothers in 1950 was 4%. And then the Institute for Family Studies today says it's at 40. In the 1980s, it was 28. And then today, they say it's 40%. That's 1 out of 3 children are living in an unmarried parent household. This is, what we're here to say is that this is catastrophic. And if this trend continues, it will potentially destroy our nation from within. Moral decay. So why does marriage matter? Why does marriage matter? We take from Glenn Stanton, who is a research advocate for Christian family values. And he states that there is a mountain of scientific evidence in published literature over the past few decades proving that marriage matters. Let's go over some of those key points. Marriage matters because marriage reduces the risk of poverty for children and communities. Consider this fact: 8.4% of married couples, 8.4% of children who are raised in a married couple family grow up in poverty. In contrast to that, 40.7% of children raised in single mother families will grow up in poverty. That's a 500% increase. Do you know what kind of impact that has on a child's life? It's huge. To be born and raised in poverty increases the probability of kids who do poorly in school, get involved in crimes, gangs, drugs, other high-risk behavior. But I take a moment and I want to acknowledge something very important. I want to acknowledge the single mothers and fathers who work so hard to raise their children, because those people are to be honored and admired for their heroic effort. Everyone has their own journey. We're not here to shame the journey. We're simply addressing the issue. We want to make things better. We really want to make things better because that's my generation. It's my brothers and sisters, and we have to face the reality of our current situation. But we honor those people. Marriage matters. Marriage protects physical and mental health. So along with this trend towards single parenthood comes a dramatic increase in child abuse. And we look at this diagram where the orange are children raised with their biological parents. And the rest are situations where they're either unmarried or single parents with no partner or with a partner. And the dynamic increase in abuse physically, sexually, emotionally is both painful and for me, it's personal. You know, I ask you all a personal question now. Have you met the children who experience these kinds of abuse in their life? Think about God's heart in that time when he sees his children go through this kind of suffering. Some of us have even experienced this in our life. We know it hurts. We know it destroys a life. So we wonder why our young people are confused, lost, and running around doing all that they're doing. Marriage matters. As the number of homes without fathers increases, so does violent crime. And I read from 2004, the Journal of Research on Adolescence. Young men who grow up in homes without fathers are twice as likely to end up in jail as those who come to traditional two-parent families. Those boys whose fathers were absent from the household had double the odds of being incarcerated, even when other factors such as race, income, parent education, and urban residence were held constant. Marriage matters. Marriage is the glue that holds society together. And Stanton concludes that it's the glue. But it's not just him. 100 family and legal scholars concluded in this report that came from the Institute for American Values, and they said the well-being of society and children depends on the health of our marriage culture. The well-being of society and children depends on the health of our marriage culture. When marriages fail or when there is no marriage, it impacts our society. I want you to consider that young man who's a high school dropout, grew up in poverty, was physically and sexually abused as a child, has his own serious emotional problems, and is at present in prison for a felony. And ask yourself, what are the odds that he grew up in a healthy, intact family? What are the odds? And we see from everything we were just studying that the odds are almost zero when marriages fail. So this brings us to the purpose and the goal of this chosen seminar. We've given the statistics and this information, but it all boils down to one truth. We, as righteous believers, are chosen to revive America, revive the church by restoring and building anew God-centered, healthy marriages and families. Our task and the purpose of this seminar is to shine a light on those God-given principles that are needed in order for us to transform the institution of marriage and family. And when we heal the family to reflect how God intended for it from the very beginning, we will naturally solve the problems that we see in our communities and in our nation today. This is God's great desire to build his kingdom here in America. That's why we are chosen. And I love the way that Father Moon describes the purpose of marriage. That marriage is more than a simple coming together of a man and a woman. Through marriage, a new future is created. Societies are formed. Nations are built. God's world of peace is realized with married families at the center. And for that reason, marriage is sacred. It's worthy of praise, respect, and honor. And as my generation loses that, I dream, as a young person, I dream for that to be advocated. This is why we're chosen. So before concluding this session, I would like to briefly share with you the story behind the Blessing Movement, where this all began, and the principles that are going to be shared in the next session. And it starts with Father and Mother Moon. Many of you, most of you know who this is. They were married in 1960, Reverend Moon, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, but I refer to them affectionately as Father and Mother Moon. They were born not more than 30 miles apart from each other, along the same river in the northern part of Korea, which was before it was divided north and south, and they were born on the same day. In the lunar calendar, although different years, Father Moon in 1920 in Jeongju, and the house you see there is his house that he was raised in. Mother Moon in Shin-Uri-ri in 1943. And at the time of Father Moon's birth in Korea was under the military occupation of imperialist Japan. And for those that know history, know that there was great suffering for the people in Korea, especially Korean Christians during that time, because the Japanese imperial emperor wanted them to worship him. So they were imprisoned and even put to death, and they were desperate people. So Father Moon was one of them, and he would desperately go to prayer to understand how a God of love would cause or possibly allow such evil to dominate the world. The younger Father Moon went to the mountains, to Mount Myodu, where he prayed, desperately asking God. And on Easter morning in 1935, while he was in prayer, he had a profound experience with Jesus. And here's what he says in his autobiography. It was the night before Easter in the year I turned 16. I was on Mount Myodu praying all night and begging God in tears for answers. Why had he created a world so filled with sorrow and despair? Why was the all-knowing, all-powerful God leaving the world in such pain? What should I do for my tragic homeland? I wept in tears as I asked these questions repeatedly. And he goes on to share, and Jesus appeared before me. He appeared in an instant like a gust of wind and said to me, God is in great sorrow because of the pain of humankind, and you must take on a special mission on earth having to do with heaven's work. So Father Moon's experience with Jesus changed his life. And over the next 10 years, he would devote himself to the study of the truth. And what Father Moon received from Jesus as revelation and calling was that the time had come to teach the importance of family. God's kingdom, the world of peace that all people long for, will only be realized when peace, or when what we would call heaven, is established in the family. So Father Moon goes and seeks to share this message, and he's rejected, misunderstood, persecuted. The communists during that time had taken over in the north and arrested Father Moon and almost beat him to death. And when he recovered and attempted to restart his ministry, he was again arrested, this time forced into a labor camp to die. And he survives because of the Korean War. The UN forces liberated the camp he was in. So he escapes from prison and he travels south. There he builds this hut that you see here with mud and rocks and scrapbooks, boxes for a roof. And this is where he works. He begins his work to embrace this calling from Jesus to bring peace to the world through the transformation of the family. And during that same time, Father Moon is walking his course. Mother Moon is also being raised through her course, which is not easy, and by her grandmother as well. Her mother and her grandmother, who were devout people of faith, they too were arrested in communist North Korea. And like Father Moon, they were able to escape, go south. And going south, they went on this journey that God guided them through the ravages of the Korean War, and eventually were guided to Father Moon's ministry. And Father and Mother Moon were then married, but they were not married in an ordinary way. You can even look at their faces. They did not marry for themselves or in order to satisfy personal desires. They married knowing clearly that they had a mission to reverse the pattern of marriage in our world today and create a new beginning as a human family. And as a couple, they devoted themselves to that calling of bringing God's blessing to the families of the earth. So although persecution continued, Father Moon never stopped teaching the message he had been given. I know many of you pastors on the call can relate to this persecution that you have faced, so much misunderstanding. But being called, you never gave up. That's why we honor our pastors here today. And slowly people began to understand you, and they began to understand Father Moon and respond to it. And 1 year after their blessing, 1960, they started to bless couples. 36 in 1961, 72, 124, then 430, then 777 couples, 1,800 couples, 8,000 couples, and then in 1992, 30,000 couples gathered from all over the world at the Olympic Stadium in Seoul, Korea. And among those 30,000, the amazing thing was that it was participants from different denominations, even different faiths. Jews, Buddhists, Muslims. That's the beauty of the blessing ceremony and the 43-day journey to restore true love and revive America. Is that all are welcome. It's a public blessing ceremony that's held, but members of the different denominations are invited to give their blessing on the couples. And that's because the blessing of marriage and family is bigger than any one denomination. No one needs to change or leave their denomination in order to participate. But the purpose is that we can grow a love so big as the community of God, our Heavenly Parent, and embrace all peoples of different faiths and open up a door for them to receive God's grace. Incredible work. In September of 2012, as you know, Father Moon passed at the age of 92. He had fulfilled the mission that God had given him to fulfill in bringing God and Jesus' message to the world, living a life of true love, and through the marriage blessing, together with Mother Moon, establish God's family and bring that to the world. And since his passing, Mother Moon has continued that work, going out to the world on speaking tour after speaking tour to share this good news with humanity and bring about a world of peace, one family at a time. And in this photo here was Madison Square Garden that many of you attended, New York City. And here she's speaking to 100,000 people who are gathered in South Africa. She says this quote in her autobiography, her memoir: "My path has been one of raising up every valley and making every mountain and hill low. From the day of our holy wedding, my husband and I traveled the world so that all people will see God's salvation. We visited every country, moved so quickly that I hardly had time to take off my shoes." So the blessing ceremony is the centerpiece of their ministry and calling. The work of Father and Mother Moon extended beyond that. And they understood that the social environment of the world has to also be transformed in order for these families blessed in marriage to prosper. And for that reason, they founded multiple organizations, institutions, like the Sun Moon Academy for children, the Chongshim International Academy for middle and high school, a university that's founded on the philosophy of love heaven, love humanity, love the nation, Chongshim Divinity Graduate School, UTS, Unification Theological Seminary, the Little Angels who honor God by performing incredible arts, Universal Ballet Company, the World Media Association, which connects us to the Washington Times, Seigei Ilbo, Sekai Nippo. They built hospitals to care for people, uniting Eastern and Western medicine. They started organizations like the Women's Federation for World Peace in '92 to bring international women organization together to promote the role of heavenly women in creating a peaceful world. Or youth movements like CARP, which I was personally a part of in college, which is an international college association to bring young people back to God throughout the nations. And in 2020, UPF, Universal Peace Federation, which they founded, brought thousands of delegates, parliamentarians, religious leaders, leaders in every field, media, education, business, from all countries around the world for the purpose. And you can hear her speech when they did this event. It was for the purpose of honoring God. Incredible speakers and key figures. But above all, Father and Mother Moon placed their focus on Christian clergy, both America and in the world. Why? Because Christianity is chosen. It is chosen to revive America. It is chosen to bring the blessing to the world. They are the leaders chosen to do the heavenly work of kingdom building in our world today. For this reason, we bring clergy beyond America into the world with the blessing. And in America, we bless couples in marriage. So for Mother Moon and Father Moon, creating a world of peace in which all people live as one family is not some future reality she is waiting for or hoping will appear. For her, it is a calling that God has given her. She has been chosen, and we are chosen too. So I thank you for participating in this first session. I'm excited for the rest of today. You're going to hear from Dr. Glavinia next. And that next session will be introducing these God-given principles regarding marriage and family. Principles that Father and Mother Moon embodied, but also that they were called to teach by Jesus. Understanding these principles helps us to understand what we need to do in order to create heavenly, healthy families in America today and reverse the crisis that we see, the real crisis in our nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Holmes. Your presentation today is heart-moving. It is touching. We pray for, really, what an opportunity to eliminate poverty, to bring it down to its lowest state. So many of us have had that at heart. Through the blessing, we can. At this time, Youngsun, would you prepare everyone for a 10-minute breakout? During your breakouts, I'd like for you to consider today, how do you see the importance of the family? And how vital is a blessed family to the healing, the revival of America? 10 minutes, we'll see you again. Thank you for being here. Chosen.